Good afternoon, everyone. So I think I'm live. This is my first YouTube live, so please bear with me if I'm getting used to all the configurations of it. But welcome. I hope that you're all well. So I am going to start by just sharing my screen with you. Remember, if you've got any questions, please let me know. I'll try my best to answer them during the session, but if not, I will definitely answer questions later. Do feel free to leave comments in the comment section below. But welcome. So I'm really excited. So just to make sure that you're here in the right place, I'm going to be going over what you and your child can do over the summer to revise for their English. And this is going to give a clear roadmap, and it's aimed at Key Stage 4, so that's GCSE students, but also Key Stage 3 students as well. So let me share my screen with you all. And if you can't see me or there's a problem there, but hopefully you can. So it's time to up-level your study habits, okay? So what will you gain by the end of the session? So by the end of the day session, you will know what your child will study in English. You'll know what examiners are expecting to achieve a grade 9. Now, bear in mind, if you're in Key Stage 3, so this is year 7, 8, or 9, obviously it depends on the school. They might have grades like grades 1 to 9 to kind of emulate what's expected of them at GCSE, because everything is building up towards those exams. Or they might have expecting or meeting expectations or underachieving or something like that. So it really doesn't matter. The reason why I say this is because regardless of what individual schools are doing, ultimately it's building towards that attainment of a grade 9 or in that spectrum of the mark scheme. And so it's really important that you understand what examiners are looking for. And I'll explain what that means for the younger years as well. Understand how the mark scheme works. I know that the English is notorious for being difficult to understand, so I will do my best to help you to understand and decipher that. Know how to use different revision strategies and insight into grade 9 answers by looking at model answers, and exclusive discount on the summer program and resources, because I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't share with you our resources, our guides, and our products, and our exciting summer programs that I know will be beneficial to your child. So what will your child be studying over when they start back in September? What will they be studying in their English? So Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, here's a learning overview. So they will be developing their reading skills through analysis of fiction, non-fiction, and literary heritage texts. So what does that mean? So it means when we look at fiction, that means things such as novels, novellas, poetry, plays, so Shakespeare, 19th century text, 20th century text, and that also links into literary heritage text as well. So your child will be exposed to books, novels, stories from different time periods, and it helps your child to understand how ideas have been shaped by the time period, but also how ideas have developed and changed over time. We'll also be looking at non-fiction text, so that's newspaper articles, speeches, letters. By what your child will also be covering is improving their writing for a range of purposes and audiences. So this is a really important skill. Think about it in real life. Your child needs to be able to write an email to their friends, it's a means of communication, but also they need to be able to write emails in professional settings, so for workplaces or for applying for work, for academia if they go into college or university. Okay, they need to be able to adapt their writing for specific purposes, and this is a skill that is in greater demand, especially as things move towards more online. You see people having to do presentations online and communication, things like that. So it's really important that your child is able to communicate their ideas in the written form. So the way this is tested in English is narrative writing, so writing stories, writing descriptions, writing essays, just to name a few. And as I said, studying a variety of texts as well. Enhanced speaking and listening skills through discussion, presentations, and debates. At GCSE, your child will be expected to do an oral presentation. So there is a speaking exam as part of the English. Now, I should say that this doesn't equate to your final grade. So what that means is if your child, for example, fails their oral exam in English, it doesn't hinder their chance of getting a grade 9. It doesn't link into that grade. But on your transcript, when you get to your results, it tells you whether your child has passed or whether they've got a distinction, which is the highest level. So it goes past merit distinction. So your school should be working with a child to improve their confidence, because a lot of children can be quite shy, especially if they're going from year 6 to year 7, or sometimes even year 9 and GCSE, because they feel overwhelmed. They feel like they don't have the right answers. But it's really important. And while this doesn't contribute to the final grade in your child's English, it's still really important because one, obviously, they need to be able to develop that habit anyway for interviews, for presentations, for work, and even for social skills as well. But beyond that as well, it's important because as a learner, if they can, do presentations and things like that, will help to solidify their knowledge of those techniques and ideas that they are exploring. Your child will also be building their vocabulary and grammar for effective communication, and practice critical thinking, evaluation, writing methods, and effects. Now, that is really essential. Critical thinking and evaluation, those two are really, really important skills to develop. One, that's the difference between students who excel in English and those who don't do so well, because this goes beyond the classroom. This goes beyond what the teacher covers. It is really about your child being able to use their own knowledge and what the teachers have said and putting it into their work. Now, this is actually a crucial skill to develop, because when you think about critical thinking, that is using knowledge, your own knowledge, and using the information around you to form an opinion. And that's so important when listening to the news or reading newspapers and deciphering information around you. And it doesn't matter what profession your child goes into, whether it's science, math, or engineering, whatever it is, medicine, they need to be able to have that critical thinking skills. Evaluation of writers, methods, and effects. Again, this is really essential, because that will help your child to be able to understand what techniques the writer has used for what impact. And again, that's not only important in English, but those analytical skills are essential to other areas of study. But beyond that as well, it's a life skill, because if they can understand, this politician is trying to convince me using these techniques, it can help them to form an opinion, an educated opinion. So here are some of the set texts that your child might be studying: Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Merchant of Venice. It could be A Midsummer Night's Dream, Son of Four, Christmas Carol, Streetcar Named Desire, The Great Gatsby, The War of the Worlds, of Mice and Men. Okay, so what I would suggest is, if your child is going from year 9 to year 10, speak to their English teacher, find out what set text they'll be studying. They should be able to tell you. If they can't or they don't, then what I would recommend is, over the summer, exploring 19th century texts, exploring 20th century texts, exploring 21st century texts. And you can do that, and exploring Shakespeare texts, which is 16th, 17th century. And you can do that by just, reading Macbeth or watching adaptations. You can find them on YouTube. You can also, there's some BBC adaptations. Those are fantastic for Shakespeare. They're quite short. You can look at The Sign of Four from Arthur Conan Doyle, that's Sherlock Holmes. You can even watch the modern day version to kind of get the idea of the themes and the characterizations, okay? Now, of course, the film adaptations, TV adaptations might be different depending on what source you go for. But again, it's just exposing them to the ideas, exposing them to that world, and that's really important and crucial. If your child is in year 10 going into year 11, then they know what their set texts are, and they should be definitely reading them again, rereading them over the summer. Now, again, if your child is going into year 11 and they have not covered all of their set texts, that's fine. But I would argue that they should then be reading the texts that they haven't yet studied, so that they are familiar with the characters, the themes, the language, and that will give them a head start in September, so they're not feeling overwhelmed. And if your child is in year 7, year 8, then again, I would recommend that they start reading some Shakespeare. You can read some of the Light-based Macbeth, is one that is often read, or Romeo and Juliet. Another good one is A Midsummer Night's Dream. You can read A Much Ado About Nothing, and there's also film adaptations of those, so get exposing them to that. Of Mice and Men is quite an easy read. The themes were quite difficult and tragic. I don't want to spoil any of the ending. That's a great one to look at. And A Christmas Carol as well. That's quite common as well for 19th century texts. And again, they don't have to read all of it, even if they just read the opening of it and discuss that, or write down some what they've learned about it, or vocabulary. That will help them just to get an idea and feel for it. On top of that as well, I would recommend for all year groups that you start to look at the historical context of these periods. You can do some research on that online. Think about the time in which they were writing, because a crucial skill that's essential, and we'll look at the mark scheme in just a moment, but is being able to understand how the wider social historical context impacted the writer's choice of characterizations, techniques that they've used. And the best way to think of it is like this: in today's world, what are we influenced by? So one big thing is COVID, right? We've all been influenced by COVID, whether we agree with the politicians and governments means or whatever is irrelevant, but it has shaped our worldview. So that's a crucial event. If you think about these different time periods, there will be different events that have shaped the writer's opinion or worldview. And so understanding that historical context is essential. So I would encourage you as you saw, part of the literary heritage is understanding key events and how that may have influenced the writers. Okay, so if we look at English literature, then this is from the government website, and you can find this online quite easily. You can see that students should be able to read a wide range of classical literature fluently with good understanding, read in depth, critically and evaluatively, so that they're able to discuss and explain their understanding and ideas. As I said, that's a skill that's really difficult because that goes beyond the classroom. And to be quite frank with you, it's the area that teachers often don't go into too much detail for. The reason being is because the current curriculum doesn't allow for it, and also because again, this is no disrespect, teachers do a fantastic job, but their job is to ensure that the greater number of students do as well as they possibly can. They're looking for a pass and above, right? For Ofsted, let's be realistic here. And to get those grade 8 to 9 is being able to develop that skill. So they're going to really be able to, they're really going to be focusing on, well, actually, what do we need to get a pass and, beyond that. And so it's the really able students who are able to excel and get a 7 and above. And those students who get the help, the expert help beyond the classroom, who are able to really achieve those grades 8s and 9s. So that could be from a tutor, from guides, from courses, really specific in those areas. Develop the habit of reading widely and often. So hopefully your child will be inspired to read more. Appreciate the depth and power of the English literary heritage. Write accurately, effectively, and analytically about their reading using standard English, and acquire and use a wide vocabulary, including grammatical terminology. So this is really important because a lot of students here fall down on this area. So what this is essentially saying is your child needs to be able to write an essay. They need to be able to analyze the set text, and they need to be able to use a wide range of vocabulary. And quite often students get angry about this because they think, well, this is literature, not language. But if you think about it, having a great vocabulary is essential to expressing ideas, because if you have a greater number of words at your disposal, you're going to be able to explain your ideas specifically and clearly. So what I would recommend that you do over the summer as part of your revision is read. Read your set texts over the summer, ask your school about them. If you don't know, read a wide range of texts from different periods, watch your film adaptations with subtitles on. And where you can find the novels and resources, your local library, YouTube, you can buy them on Amazon, you can buy them secondhand. Those are key areas that I would focus on. And I would say, though, it's important that you understand that while I say it's important to read, in short, it is active reading. So what is active reading? What does that mean? Okay, because just reading the text doesn't mean anything. And quite often parents lose their minds because they say, oh, my child has read this text, but they're not understanding it. Or the child seems to be reading it, but not taking in anything. And, quite often schools will say, oh, just read. But actually, that's really poor advice, because it doesn't mean anything unless it's active reading. So active reading, and I'll explain what that is now. Active reading is a method of engaging with a text to improve comprehension and retention. So active reading isn't just about going through the motions of reading the text. It's about making sure that you understand it and that you can memorize it, okay? Or memorize key points or characters about it or key quotes. So strategies for active reading, what does that look like? So summarize each chapter in your own words. So encourage your child, once they've read a chapter, to summarize what happens. If they've read a scene, what happens? What's the main ideas? What's the main events that happen? Okay, who's involved? Right, character profiles. So that will encourage them as they're reading to to add to it. So, for example, if they're reading of Mice and Men and they have the character of Lenny, they might write down what Lenny is like at the start, and that might change and develop throughout the novella. It's important that they look up vocabulary that they do not know. Okay, so this is what I mean by active reading. Active reading is essentially when you do something with your reading. So you're not just passively taking in, that you're actually doing something with it. Okay, so as I say, it could be writing a book review. But it's when you critically engage with it, okay? It could also be writing up a presentation, depending on how your child prefers to learn or what they like to do, but those are a few ideas for you, okay? And the importance through the GCSE curriculum. So if educators actively engage students in the process of reading by asking them why questions to support connections beyond the text, students' comprehension will be broader and deeper. And this is from EduBlog's Scholastic post, okay? And that's really important. This is why you need to start with active reading. So this is when your child starts to, and this helps to engage with the critical thinking. As I said, because this helps develop critical thinking, crucial for achieving a grade 9, which you saw from the mark scheme and which you saw from what is expected of them from the examiners. So you can ask your child to think about the character profiles and think about what's happened, and then to ask, well, why is that happening? Or why is the writer focusing on that? Why is the character like this? Okay, and it's okay if they don't have the answers, but as long as they're starting to think about it and forming an idea, forming an opinion, that's going to help them to, one, be able to support their ideas based on the text and what they've read. It encourages them to use their own knowledge, and it goes beyond the classroom, and it will help them to develop that critical thinking skills that are not taught in school. And here's a mark scheme. So you've got AOs, these are called assessment objectives. You've got AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4. So again, read and respond to text, maintain a critical style, and develop an informed personal response. Use text references, including quotations. Analyze the language, form, and structure. Show understanding of the relationships between text and their context. And use a range of vocabulary and sentence structure. So as I said, you're being assessed on your ability to understand, essentially, why the writers have written their text, what techniques do they use to convey their ideas, and your child's ability to understand and to use the relevant subject terminology and write in a critical, engaging style. So here's an example. Love is a fruit. So love is a fruit. That's our quotation, okay? And our question is asking us, how does the writer express their attitude towards love? So love is a fruit is a simile. Okay, so if this was literally, let's say, a poem, and we had, how does the writer express their attitude towards love? We could write something like this. Here, the writer expresses their positive attitude towards love through the metaphor. Oh, sorry, yeah, it's a metaphor. I said simile. It's a metaphor. Why is it a metaphor, not a simile? It's a metaphor because it's saying love is a fruit. It's not saying love is like a fruit, which is why it's a metaphor. So a metaphor goes beyond a simile. It's still comparison, but it tries to bridge that gap by saying that one thing is something else. So we've got here the writer expresses their positive attitude towards love through the metaphor love is a fruit. By comparing the abstract noun love to the concrete noun fruit, the writer hints at their belief that love is beneficial to people. This can be inferred as fruit connotes health and sweetness. Moreover, the fact fruit is vibrant and comes in different shapes and sizes suggests that the writer feels that love is something that everyone can enjoy. It is a universal experience. This interpretation is furthered by the fact that the writer deliberately uses the general noun fruit rather than a specific type. So can you see how detailed this small quotation, and I'm able to expand on this? And the reason I'm able to expand on this is for two reasons. One, I know what the technique is and I understand the technique thoroughly. And two, I'm using my own knowledge. I'm able to critically think about it. Okay. So I hope you can understand why it's important for your child to actively read. Okay. Now for English language, and I'm just going to stop there for a moment, actually, just see if we've got any questions. I'm just checking the chat on my phone. So as I say, beg your pardon, it might seem a bit rude, but apologies for that. Oh, hang on. So someone said that the screen is black, which means it might have been black the whole way through. So that's a bit annoying. Oh, hang on. As far as I can see, it's still there. So hopefully it's not black for everyone. Let me just check the chat box there. So I had somebody once say, hopefully it's not. Let me stop sharing and reshare. Come up for everyone. It's saying it's showing, so hopefully it is. If it is showing for you, just let me know in the chat box. But if it's not, do let me know. Hopefully it is. But let's continue on then. So for English language then. So in English language, students should be able to read a wide range of text fluently and with good understanding, read quickly and use knowledge gained from the reading to inform and improve their own writing, write effectively and coherently using standard English, and acquire and apply a wide range of vocabulary. In addition to this, and use grammar correctly, punctuation and spelling, of course. And in addition to this, listen to and understand spoken language and use spoken standard English effectively. Okay, spoken language will be reported on as part of the qualification, but will not part of form of final mark and grade. So like I said, your child will be, so I'm just looking at the chat again, just to make sure that everyone can see it. Yeah, it's fine. I think everyone can see it. So you can all see the screen. Apparently you can't see me. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why. My camera is on. I think that's something to do with screen sharing on YouTube. So I won't worry about it. As long as you can hear me, and I will, hopefully when I end this shared, you'll be able to see me. So with regards to this, as I was saying, you with spoken language, you will be tested on it, but it doesn't form part of your final mark or grade. So it's really important that your child is able to develop that, because it does go on the transcript. And if your child does well, then you can submit that to applications for work and for university. And it just shows that your child has a good ability to communicate. And as I say, it's a skill that is essential and that employers and academics look for. So with language, then it's important that your child is able to adapt their writing. That's a key a skill here. And they're able to use what they've read as well, and inform their writing. So here's a mark scheme here. So just to see the grade. So this is taken from AQA, just to be clear. However, it doesn't really matter because the skills are the same regardless of the exam board. So it says explain, comment on, and analyze how writers use language and structure to achieve effects and influence readers using relevant subject terminology to support their views. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So your child needs to be able to writing for purpose. Why? To help develop different writing styles for different purposes. So newspaper article, speech, letter, description, narrative, personal essay, evaluation, analysis. So this is the different types of writing, academic writing that your child will be expected to do and to produce. So in Key Stage 3, they will work on how, all the essentials of, what do you need to include in a newspaper article, a speech, a letter. What does a good description have? A narrative? How do you evaluate? How do you analyze? And at GCSE level, it's really just fine-tuning that. However, unfortunately, what we see in schools and in the curriculum, again, it's no dig at teachers. Teachers do a wonderful job. It's just the way the curriculum is, and I agree is a little bit outdated. Time they get to GCSE, a lot of them don't know how to evaluate, or they don't know how to write a proper essay, or they haven't really done newspaper articles or something like that, so it's lacking. So it's really essential that over the summer that your child is exposed to a wide variety of this, and I'll explain how to do that in just a moment. Okay, so that they're used to these key features. So writing tasks to help develop your writing style over summer. So write a film, book, or TV show review. So if your child enjoys watching films or watching TV shows or reading, then they can write a review about it. Encourage them to write a letter to a relative, write a song or a poem. Now, the reason being is, while they might not have to write a song or a poem as part of their GCSE, if they are able to use their techniques in their own work, then that will help them to understand why writers use them, and it will help them to retain that information. And also, in their descriptions and narratives, they'll be able to use some of the ideas like the sensory imagery and the similes or metaphors that they use. Encourage them to read a newspaper article on a topic of their choice, then write an article with your stance on it. So, for example, reputable online news reporters that I would recommend would be BBC, The Guardian. The Guardian is fantastic. The Guardian is really good. You can literally type in Guardian and gaming, or Guardian and climate change, and then encourage your child to read that so they understand the different style, and then encourage them to write an article about that same topic or about their stance on it. If they can do research on it, that would be fantastic. Or they can use they can use their knowledge from other subjects. So if they were writing an article on climate change, they can certainly use their knowledge from science and geography. I should say as well that for English in the exam, you can make up information, you can make up statistics and facts, as long as they're believable. Of course, in real life, you would do your due diligence and you'd make sure that it was accurate and research, and you'd cite your sources. But again, it's just important to know so that your child has got that artistic license, but it has to be believable. So you wouldn't say, 100% of people believe this. You might say survey, say 85% or something like that. Practice coming up with arguments. So to secure a grade 9 in English language, your child needs to be able to formulate an argument. This is a thesis statement, and this is not taught in secondary schools. I don't know why. As an educator and somebody who's taught in schools, it's just not there. It's my pet peeve. And the reason for that is because for those of you who may have gone on to further education or higher education, you know that writing an essay, you must have a thesis statement. And that's how you write essays. It's what your child will be expected to do when they do A-levels, or if they do A-levels or BTEC. It's what's expected of them when they go to university, and it's expected if they write any reports, for their work. And yet it's not taught at school, and I don't know why. And it's one of those things that hold students back, because you might have heard of petal, pizza, pill paragraphs, and while they're good, they hinder students, because if they worked, then every child would be able to achieve a grade 7 and above using it, but they don't, and it's because they're limiting, and it's because they don't encourage a child to have that critical thinking. So a thesis statement is your main argument, and it's important because it helps the examiner understand what you're trying to prove. It helps guide your examiner when reading your essay. It helps you, the writer, to know what ideas to include in your essay, and it helps you, the writer, to know what quotes to use to prove your points. So here's an example. So this is a GCSE task, okay? So it came on great, oiled, resilient, striding legs. It towered 30 feet above half the trees, a great evil god, folding its delicate watchmaker's claws close to its oily reptilian chest. Each lower leg was a piston, 1,000 pounds of white bone sunk in thick ropes of muscle, sheathed over in a gleam of pebbled skin like the armor of a terrible warrior. Each thigh was a ton of meat, ivory, and steel mesh. And from the great breathing cage of the upper body, those two delicate arms dangled out front, arms with hands which might pick up and examine men like toys, while the snake neck coiled, and the head itself, a ton of sculptured stone, lifted easily upon the sky. Its mouth gaped, exposing a fence of teeth like daggers. Its eyes rolled, ostrich eggs, empty of all expression save hunger. It closed its mouth in a death grin. It ran, its pelvic bones crushing aside trees and bushes, its taloned feet clawing damp earth, leaving prints 6 inches deep wherever it settled its weight. It ran with a gliding ballet step, far too poised and balanced for its 10 tons. It moved into a sunlit area warily, its beautifully reptilian hands feeling the air. And the question asks us, how does the writer use language here to describe the Tyrannosaurus rex? And I should quickly note here that this again is from AQA. And again, it doesn't matter whether your child's doing Excel, Educast, IGCSE, OCR, your child will have a question on language. It might say, how does the writer use language structured here to create tension? Or how does the writer use language here to convey their attitude towards it? It doesn't really matter. The difference being is the wording of the question and the marks. And this is worthwhile noting as well that for AQA, this will change and it will be more specific with this question. So the change in the question is beneficial because it will help your child to understand what the examiners are asking. So here's an example model answer. So the first sentence is the thesis statements, their main argument. So let's have a look here. So throughout the excerpt, the T-Rex is described as terrifyingly threatening, as well as an animal worthy of awe and respect. So when you read this, or when you listened to me reading this, you might have felt something differently. You might have felt, actually, this T-Rex sounds terrifying. It sounds like a monster. And that's valid, by the way. And that's okay. That's your personal response. Apologies for that. That was me just dropping my water bottle. That's valid because that's your personal interpretation. And as long as you can support that with points from the text, that's okay. Now, I should say this, that this is what helps you to form a critical opinion, having this thesis statement. Because now, in the rest of this essay, they need to prove that it's terrifyingly threatening and that it is an animal worthy of respect and awe. So let's have a look at this. So we've got opening with a declarative, it came on great, oiled, resilient legs. The writer immediately emphasizes the sheer power of the animal. The adjective oiled gives the impression that the T-Rex is an excellent killing machine. This idea is further developed through the semantic field of machinery, since it has watchmaker's claws and steel mesh thighs. By doing this, the writer makes the T-Rex seem like an unstoppable animal that is not only intricately designed to kill, but is also capable of defending itself against any attack. So can you see that this is a fantastic answer? It's used technical terms, declarative, semantic field. It's embedded the quotations, and it's linked the ideas to this being a terrifyingly threatening. And now it's going to look at an animal worthy of awe and respect. And this shows a different interpretation, but they've not undermined the argument. And this is the beauty of the thesis statement. So, however, this aggressive tone is juxtaposed to the use of paradoxical statements, such as it being a great evil God. Typically, God has connotations of an omnipotent, all-loving being. But here, the writer subverts what is expected by many readers, so that the strength and ferociousness of the T-Rex is accentuated. This paradoxical description is built on by describing its claws, which conveys the idea of a wild, savage beast as delicate. This word collocation is unexpected, thus highlighting how the T-Rex is deadly, yet also a magnificent creature in its own right, and so deserves respect. Okay, and then let's look at another one. So this is from Edexcel. So the woman in white, Wilkie Collins. In one moment, every drop of blood in my body was brought to a stop by the touch of a hand laid lightly and suddenly on my shoulder from behind me. I turned on the instant, with my fingers tightening round the handle of my stick. There, in the middle of the broad, bright, high road, there, as if it had that moment sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven, stood the figure of a solitary woman dressed from head to foot in white garments, her face bent in grave inquiry on mine, her hand pointing to the dark cloud over London as I faced her. I was far too seriously startled by the suddenness with which this extraordinary apparition stood before me, in the dead of night and in that lonely place, to ask what she wanted. The strange woman spoke first. In this extract, there's an attempt to create an atmosphere of mystery. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. So let's have a look at this. So this is evaluation. So Collins successfully creates an atmosphere of mystery by slowly revealing details about the sudden appearance of the woman. However, perhaps the best way in which an atmosphere of mystery is created is by Collins drawing on Gothic tropes, as this genre tends to have secrets and explores the unknown. So this is a fantastic thesis statement. You can see it comes at the start. and it's their opinion, and they're going to use the text to support it. So we're going to argue that there's an atmosphere of mystery, but it's set an appearance of the woman, and by drawing on Gothic tropes. Okay, so immediately the reader's interest is piqued by the abrupt opening, which zooms in on the man's reaction. Every drop of blood was brought to a stop. This seems to be a disproportionate reaction to someone asking for directions, and so raises the reader's suspicion about why the man is so startled. What is it about the woman that inspires such a dramatic reaction? Furthermore, by using the passive voice to describe how the touch of a hand frightened him, it slowly reveals the woman one body part at a time, thus effectively developing the atmosphere of mystery. So what you can see from this answer is that the student has gone on to ask why. Why is this effective? Why? And that's really important. Otherwise, you end up with blanket statements saying something like this. Oh, the writer wants us to continue reading, or it's shocking to the reader. You need to explain, well, why? Okay. So does that make sense so far? So remember, over the summer, to help you to develop this writing style, you need to write film and book and TV reviews, write a letter, write a song or poem, read newspaper articles, okay, and then write an article on it. Or again, you can engage in active reading activities with the article as well. Write down any vocabulary that you don't know. You can also write a summary of it as well. And then also practice coming up with arguments. This will help you to come up with a thesis statement. So again, listen to the news or the radio, or when you've watched a film, come up with, well, your opinion on it, even if it differs from your friends or your relatives, and discuss those ideas. And that will help you to develop those thesis statements so that you're able then to implement it in your own writing like this. Okay. Another important thing, as you saw from the mark schemes and from what the exam is expecting, is for you to develop your techniques of vocabulary. So it's important to advance your vocabulary as it is in the mark scheme. It helps you to express your ideas, and it helps you to understand a wider range of texts. Because if the writers are using more complex vocabulary, it will help you to understand and decipher what they mean. It is important that you advance your understanding and knowledge of techniques, and it's important that you do that beyond merely recognizing them, so that you can use them effectively in your writing, and you can deepen your analysis, as we have seen. So it's really important that you not just are able to identify them and say, oh, this is a metaphor, but you're able to explain why they've been used. And as I said, this is not just for your analysis. As you saw from what the exam is expecting, it helps you then to use it in your own writing. So this is a task. So look at this image, close your eyes and imagine what it would be like to live here. Imagine what it would be like if you saw this as an outsider living elsewhere. What does it smell like? What was it like before? Okay. So this is a way of helping you to engage in, and I'll go into details about this, revision strategies, one called metacognition. And I'll go into more detail about that. So think about this. What would it like to be living here? What is it like if you saw this as an outsider? What does it smell like? Was it like this before, or was it better? Okay. And then we can use our vocabulary and understanding of techniques and our ability to think about this to come up with a narrative. So this is a model story opener. There's an estate at the bottom of our road, so vandalized and full of graffiti that you don't know whether to stop and stare, like you're in a pop-up art gallery. A big old estate. It must have once been built with promise, a way for the council to home as many people as possible. If you stand and stare long enough, you can see the hopeful details, potted plants outlining the building, a small park full of brightly coloured equipment, and the building itself painted in a vibrant light blue that brought peace and tranquility. So here you can see that this student has thought about what it was like when it was first built. So we've got the use of juxtaposition, two contrasting ideas. But now, what does it look like presently? The paint is dull and peeling off like skin being shed from a snake. Fantastic simile there. The park equipment is now a rotten swing and splintered boards. The plants potted are now a smelly ashtray full of cigarette butts. The windows of the flats are predominantly shattered by kids kicking footballs and clumsily missing the goal. On the ground floor, however, there is a pallid glow that emanates from the living room window, followed by the silhouette of a young boy, Ben. So you can see that the student has used some advanced vocabulary, pallid and emanates, for effect. And that's really important to understand. While you are marked on your vocabulary, it's not about just using big words for the sake of it. It's about using them effectively. And I hope you can see here that every word, every phrase, every technique here in this opener has a place. You get the sense that they want to hint that this place was vibrant, positive, but now it's dull and negative and, been left in disarray, it's been neglected. And actually this fits with the theme because, and I'm not going to spoil it, but later on with the characters in the story, something's revealed that is quite horrible. There's some bullying, and at the end there is something positive. But that's actually shown here in this opening by having this, description of what it was like. Okay, and that leads me nicely on then to meta cognitive strategies. And that's what I did here when I asked you to close your eyes and imagine what it would be like to live here. Imagine what it would be like if you saw this as an outsider living elsewhere, or what does it smell like? What was it like before? Okay, that's called visual thinking. And actually, visual thinking is something that we do all the time. It's when we think of something like a word and you instantaneously think of a picture. So if I say tree, you might think of the word and then you might see an image of a tree. What type of tree it is and where it is related to your personal experiences. So you've got mind mapping, mnemonics, visual association, text marking, and storytelling. So I'm going to go through some of these. So visualization. So it's when you think about like what can you see, the background, the mood, the color, when, where it is, size, how many, shape, movement, perspective, sound. Okay, and it's a natural way of thinking. So you might see the word castle and then you think of the image. Okay, and that's really important because it can help you then to go into more depth and detail about your descriptions in your narrative descriptive writing or your descriptions in narrative writing, because stories should have some description as well. And it's also important to support spelling. So you think of a word and in your mind you paint it onto a wall. You picture the word clearly. What color have you painted it? Where are the tall, short bits of the word? What letters are they? How long is the word? Visualize the shape of the word. And that's really important. So if your child or if you as a student know there are words that you commonly misspell, for example, onomatopoeia or metaphor, then you might want to use visualization to help you to remember how to spell it. And this is the steps you want to take. Picture the word. What color have you painted it? What are the tall, short bits of the word? How long is the word? And visualize the shape of the word. Okay. You imagine painting on a wall. Equally, when you're learning some advanced vocabulary, so for students who are aiming to achieve the high grade, a lot of the time some students are afraid in case they misspell it. This is a great way to help you to ensure that you spell it correctly, because as you saw, you do get marked on your spelling and punctuation and your grammar. And I should say this, that if you as a student or your child decides that actually they're going to play it safe and not use some advanced vocabulary for fear of incorrect spellings, they still won't achieve the higher grades. One, because they've not demonstrated their knowledge of vocabulary, but two, they probably haven't expressed their ideas convincingly if they're using a limited vocabulary. And this is an example of a mind map. I'm sure most of you have seen it. You can also draw pictures of it. So, for example, metaphors, the different types of metaphors there. You can see there's different colors. We've got implied, direct, extended, and I've got some examples there. Imagery, you've got visual, auditory, tactile, gustatory, olfactory. And again, you might want to write down the definition of them. So if you didn't know, you've got word class, and you can see there's also some images, little writing drawings beside it. And you can see it's like a steps of adjectives, dynamic verbs, dative verbs. You've got sounds, you've got alliteration, assonance, onomatopoeia, and the different types of alliteration, plosive, frictive, sibilants. And again, it's just a way to help you to remember and memorize the techniques. Another way is mnemonics. And again, you might have done this in geography, you might have done this in science or history. Here's one example to remember techniques. You can say Mrs. Nelp spits kale. So you've got metaphor, repetition, similes, noun phrases, ethos, logos, pathos. Sensory imagery, personification includes listener, reader, triple, strong language, and kairos. Okay. So why should you revise over the summer? So it's help your child not feel overwhelmed, okay? When they start back in September, especially if they're going into year 10 or 11, it can be quite overwhelming, because in year 11, obviously, it's their final stage of GCSE. In year 10, there's a big leap from year 9 to year 10. And it will encourage them and help them to avoid feeling stressed. It will help them to deepen their understanding and practice those skills that are important. If your child is going into year 9 is the foundational year for GCSE, so it is important. And again, if your child starts to hate, for example, in this case, English, because that's what we've covered, then that can really impact their confidence as they progress into GCSE. And if they're going into year 7 and 8, I know year 8, your child has obviously got a feel for the school they're at, got a feel for secondary school, and so it can really help them to not struggle when they go back in September. And even if they are doing well, it will help them to maintain their abilities, because over the summer you've got something called the summer slide where students lose their knowledge and retention, which is why a lot of the time at the start of the term a lot of teachers are having to go over things and recap, but they only do it briefly, and because of how much they have to cover, a lot of teachers don't do this anymore. So this is why you end up with gaps, or your child ends up with gaps in knowledge, and you might have seen this firsthand, or where your child was able to do something and then they weren't. And if they're going from primary school to secondary school, that can be quite daunting. So studying over the summer can help them to get to grips with the academic rigor of secondary school and for English, because English at secondary school is vastly different from primary school English, and it can help them to get to grips with that so that they are able to understand what's expected of them. And it's not only just important for English, but they'll be studying in more depth more subjects that require essay writing, for example, geography, history, religious education, business studies potentially, depending on your school, and even in science they have to write mini essays as well, so it can help them with that too. So what would it like if you do study over summer? So picture exam results day. Picture, what it would be like at the end of the term, your report card. What would that look like if you do study over summer? Well, it might look like you opening up the report card, or your parents looking at it, and for your child, they're feeling proud of their efforts. They're happy, they're smiling. Their teachers are enthused to work with your child because they're engaged, they're able to participate because they know and understand what's happening. And as a result of that, your child is feeling confident, they're not stressed. And then imagine what it'd be like if they didn't study over summer. So they start school back in September, they're struggling, they start maybe to misbehave in the classroom, or they don't want to do their homework, they do the bare minimum. The results come in, they open the report card, or they open their results on exam day, and they feel disappointed, they feel like a failure, they're angry. The teachers might feel it's a bit of a struggle, okay? And this can be avoided. So here are some students of ours that have done well. So online lessons helped still stay focused so that she's on track to achieve a grade 9. She actually did achieve a grade 9. She studied WJEC. Here, Thomas jumped 5 grades, jumped from a grade 3 to grade 8 in English language and literature. He went on to study medicine biochemistry at prestigious London University. And Marina and Lucas, so busy mom Marina is feeling secure that she has got the support her son needs to get back on track. And he actually improved, he jumped from grade 6 to grade 9 in both language and literature, and it also improved his confidence. He was quite a shy kid, and actually it improved his confidence and his skills. And because they were so busy, being able to go at their own pace online with the self-study features helped them to fit it into his busy schedule. So for students who want to do well in their English, we have resources that allow you to enjoy your summer while getting ahead without stress and worry, because it is important that you relax over the summer. So as a quick recap then, these are the tasks you want to do over the summer. Actively read, practice writing, dissect model answers, and engage in metacognition activities. So here's a mnemonic for you to help you. A panda dances energetically. So actively read, practice writing, dissect model answers, and engage in metacognition activities. So a panda dances energetically is a way to help you to remember it, okay? And remember, examiners want to see you use a wide range of vocabulary effectively, a clear argument, critically engaging, using your knowledge and unique experiences, and adapt your writing style for different purposes. Okay, and here then I'm just going to share with you some of our resources. So I'm just making sure that I have shown you this. So actually, before I do that, so you can gain access to our GCSE Revision Mastery Guide, and I'll show you this on the screen. Excuse me. So this is Empower Your Child with a comprehensive guide to GCSE English revision, packed with practical tips, proven strategies, and targeted exercises. This guide is designed to help students maximize their study time and achieve exam success. So it's got some success strategies there. It helps you to avoid the common pitfalls, addresses weaknesses, and it's efficient learning and motivation. So it will help your child to feel more motivated. It's only for $4.99. And will help your child with their revision. So it builds on what I've shown you today with the meta cognition strategies and helps you to put them into practice. And it also outline what examiners see as the biggest pitfalls where students have fallen down over the years and how your child can avoid them. Another guide that we have is our GCSE Summer Bundle for £8.97. So this is really important. So the GCSE Summer Bundle is our bestseller. And this is because you can gain access to narrative and descriptive writing guide, so model paragraphs, writing prompts, and sentence starters to build creative confidence. So this is really important. So if your child is in year 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11, this is really important because it does have model paragraphs. It does show you some writing prompts, like I showed you with that picture of that housing estate, and it gives you some sentence starters so your child knows how to start, and I give you some model answers as well. We also included our structure mastery guide. So one of the most misunderstood areas of the exam is broken down step by step with examples and student tips. So analyzing structure is something that a lot of students don't know how to do, and it's because they not really taught it. If you were to ask a child, or if you're a student watching this, how do you analyze structure? A lot of students struggle with this. They tend to make blanketed statements. So this is a guide that helps you to understand, list out all the structural techniques. 2, helps you to understand them, so you go beyond to help us want to read on. Okay, and it's £3.97. And you can buy these individually as well on our website. Or you've got the Unseen Poetry Guide. And again, Unseen Poetry is something that a lot of students struggle with. They get scared because it's a poem that they've not seen before. So simple strategies for analysing unfamiliar poems with confidence. It includes language tips, planning help, and writing frames. So this helps your child know how to structure the answer. It helps your child to understand how to plan the answer so that they can do this. And this is all for £8.97. So it's usually £12.91, but you get 30% off. Okay, so it's designed by teachers, tested by students, and it's perfect for the summer. And it focuses on the skills that matter. And it's broken down so that even if your child was to spend 15 to 20 minutes a day looking at these different guides at each part, will help them to excel. And then the other 2 options here, which is starting on the 21st of July. So you can purchase this now because, as I'll show you with the on-demand, there is limited places for this. So this is focusing on essay writing, creative writing. So this is our summer course, okay? And there are 2 options. There's on-demand and there's self-study. So you can either do essay writing or creative writing. So on-demand, this is with feedback, weekly feedback, is £49.97 each, or self-study is £19.97. Or you can do both of them. So you can do creative writing and essay writing on demand, with feedback is £79.97 and the self-study is £31.95. Okay. So what does this mean? So if we look at them individually, so the summer writing bundle then, so you get 20% off of this, and it commences on the 21st of July. So it is a 6-week course, and what happens is your child will gain access to a module, and they will be able to go through the modules, and then there's tasks they have to complete to support their learning. Okay, and there will be printable workbooks to go with this as well. So there's 12 pre-recorded lessons in total, and for the on demand, your child will be able to submit 1 piece of work per week from the course, and to get that feedback from myself. Okay, and this will help your child to know what areas to focus on, and it will help them essentially to build their skills in essay writing and creative writing. And as I said, you can otherwise do it a self-study one. So this is 20% off. So the self-study, this helps you to build confidence in the 2 core areas. You also get the workbooks for both of them as well. The only thing that's missing is you do not get the feedback, so you will not be able to submit any feedback. But what this means is that your child is able to go through the material on their own, and they will be able to also go through it with the workbook, which have snippets of the it has questions to help them with active reading and things like that as well. Okay, so this one is great for independent learners or families looking for structured support without the cost of tutoring. Okay, so this is pretty important. If your child is motivated, if they are doing well, but they just need to keep up their practice, then this is for your child. And of course, they can submit this work to their teachers at school in September as well. Otherwise, if you feel that actually, do you know what, my child is quite independent, but they need that accountability, or they need that extra support, or you just want to have that expert guidance, then this is perfect for them. Okay, because this will give them that structure and guidance, while also giving them that flexibility, because they can go at their own pace still, and it allows them to also get that feedback, which is essential. Okay, so I'll drop all these links below so you can have access to them. So I'm going to stop